Aaron Torres, is it okay if we cry on your shoulder today? I mean, is it okay? I mean, can we?
To cry on my shoulder, Ryan?
Yeah, we're having a little meltdown here in T-Town a little bit, man.
Listen, I am that shoulder to cry on. I have not lost faith in the Tide. I didn't lose faith in the Tide earlier this year when they went through a little bit of a lull early on. I remember you and I talking about them being a roller coaster. Well, listen, this is a little dip, but you know what I feel, Ryan? I feel that dip going up, and I feel like this team will turn things around just in time when they need to.
Whoa. Time out. You're not just saying that to make us feel good. You actually believe that?
Well, look, first of all, I think we're going to learn a lot tonight. First of all, obviously, look, we know Alabama's back is against the wall. We know the last, 4 games, is that what it is, that they're on this losing streak now? It hasn't been pretty. I get that. But listen, Ryan, this is what everyone in the SEC is going through. Remember before Alabama played Kentucky? Ryan, you asked me, Aaron, what's wrong with Kentucky this year? And I said, I don't know anything's wrong with Kentucky. I think there's just a lot of really good teams in the SEC, and when you hit a little bit of a low, then all of a sudden, a 1-game losing streak that in most years turns into a 4 or 5-game losing streak. Remember, Kentucky was on a 4-game losing streak before they played Alabama a few weeks ago. Auburn was in prime position to win this conference. They've now taken 2 bad losses, and they've dealt with injuries and stuff like that. So to me, look, it only takes 1 game, but what I was going to say was we're going to learn a lot about what Alabama's fate is for Saturday tonight, because Texas A&M plays at Georgia. Texas A&M, if you think Alabama has been a roller coaster this year, Texas A&M, they've been the biggest roller coaster at the theme park, man. I mean, they are up and down, up and down. I go on air in College Station sometimes, and I've had the host in College Station ask me, do you think this team even wants to be in the tournament? Because they're not playing like it right now. A&M got right over the weekend against Vanderbilt, which is just about the only guaranteed win in this conference. And so I'll be curious to see how A&M responds. They play at a tough Georgia team today before closing on senior night against Alabama. So look, I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I'm not here to say everything's great, everything's roses and sunshine and all that stuff. But I think that just as quickly as this thing has fallen, Alabama can pick up the win they need over the weekend and get some momentum going in the SEC tournament.
All right, Aaron, back up just a little bit, okay? I want you to give us what are reasonable, fair expectations for Alabama basketball, annual expectations, because we know ever since Nick Saban arrived here in Tuscaloosa, and that's just given us a frame of time, ever since Nick Saban has been in Tuscaloosa, you know how many tournament bids we've had? One.
Wow.
One NCAA tournament bid, okay? I want to ask you, what's fair expectations for Alabama basketball?
Well, I'll tell you this. This particular season, I think they were, coming into the year, one of the 68 best teams in college basketball. And if you had asked me in the summertime or the early fall, and I said this on your show, Ryan, when you allowed me to talk basketball back then. Back then, every time I tried to talk basketball, your producer cut me off and hung up on me. But when we did talk basketball, I said I believe this is a tournament team. This was a team that people forget with Alabama. They were on the bubble at this time last year, and they didn't close out strong, and we get it. Certain things happen. But, they returned their whole team. They add Colin Sexton and John Petty. So, of course, there is reason for optimism coming into Alabama this season. So I understand that this hasn't been the most historically significant program looking through history. But what I would add is you could say that about a lot of teams in the SEC this year. Auburn hasn't been that great historically. They're really good this year. Mississippi State hasn't been great historically. They have been better this year. They're on the bubble just like Alabama is. So I understand, and I think that's been a lot of the national perception with Alabama. A lot of the national skepticism is that how good can this team really be, because they've never been good before. Well, one, I think they're good. And two, I also think that we have to remember the SEC is so improved this year that it's kind of skewed how good we view everyone else. Because when Alabama played in the out-of-conference, I'll tell you this, they beat Rhode Island, which I know Rhode Island lost last night, but they are kind of the media darling that everyone thinks can make a deep tournament run from a small conference. They beat Oklahoma, which I know is struggling, but Oklahoma has as good a wins as anybody in college basketball. Remember, they beat Texas Tech. They beat Kansas earlier in the year. And so, oh, by the way, Alabama nearly beat Minnesota when Alabama was down to 3 players. I should add that Alabama played really well at Arizona at a time when Arizona was playing really well. We know that they're in scandal right now. So all I'm saying is, don't take a 2, 3, 4 game bad sample size in the SEC and assume that it's all doom and gloom. I believe that if this team can just get it right, and get it right obviously means beat Texas A&M, maybe win a game or 2 in St. Louis next week in the SEC tournament. If they can do that, then we are talking about a team that they can play with anybody once this field of 68 gets announced. And so they're a team that I wouldn't want to have to face in that big tournament. Of course, they got to take care of business between now and then.
Aaron Torres, he covers college hoops, college football. You can find him on the Athletic CBB at theathletic.com. He's also author of a book called One and Fun that he wrote about the Kentucky Wildcats and college basketball. Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. Connect with him, Aaron_Torres. Let me go back here just for a couple of minutes, okay? When you look at Avery Johnson, he's top 15 in money. Does that raise the expectation level for his coaching?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a fair point, Ryan. And obviously, look, I think this goes back to something that you and I have talked about in the past. When the SEC Network launched and when the amount of dollars went up, there were a lot of teams that invested in basketball. And I remember, we all remember that Alabama made a real push to get Wichita State's Greg Marshall down there. He ended up saying no. He got a fat raise where he's at, by the way. And Alabama went and got Avery Johnson. So I think it's a totally fair point by you, Ryan, in that, yes, the expectations should be higher. And it'll be curious to see how this thing plays out, because here's the thing. This is the year. Avery Johnson's got to break through. Now, I'm not saying that if he doesn't break through that he's a bust and put him on the hot seat and fire him. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. Avery Johnson, I think, has done a really, really good job there. But the reality is, you might not ever get another Colin Sexton on that campus. You might not get a 2-time Alabama Player of the Year like John Petty, although I don't think John Petty necessarily is leaving after this year the way that Colin Sexton will. So because of it, this has to be the year that you break through and you kind of build that foundation going forward. We all remember, you used the Nick Saban analogy earlier in the segment. Well, Nick Saban obviously had a disappointing first year. That second year, when they lost to Florida in the in the SEC championship game, that set the foundation for everything that this program has done since. And so I'm not saying that Avery Johnson's going to have anything like the run that Nick Saban has had, but I think obviously you guys down there support this program. As you said, financially, Avery Johnson is very well compensated. It's fair to ask, that this team make the tournament this year. But I also think it's important to build a foundation so that he can get the next Colin Sexton, so that he can get the next John Petty. If you can't do it with these guys, then it makes the next group of guys wonder, if Colin Sexton's going to get to the tournament with those guys, do I really want to go there? It'll be interesting to see. But I do think this is an important year to really build a foundation going forward.
We're talking to Aaron Torres right now going into the conversation. Aaron, I want to go back here at Colin Sexton. We've had people that have asked us, they don't see this lottery pick in Colin Sexton. I don't really have the explanation and the expert ability to explain, but you do. This guy, what do you see?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, Ryan, because the NBA evaluation process is so much different than the NFL evaluation process. And you guys see a Calvin Ridley on the football field dominating the opposition. You say, okay, this guy's too good for that random DB at Vanderbilt. He has no chance. Let him go pro. It's not fair to everybody else. Basketball is a very much different process in that, I think the NBA believes that the younger they can get these guys into their system, the better, basically the NBA believes that they can better prepare or better, I guess you would say, build up or whatever. They can get these guys better to their potential than a college coach, a college system can. Now, it's a little bit different because Avery Johnson comes from the NBA and he has a lot of that in his background. But the kind of the concept is that, when somebody drafts Colin Sexton, they're not really worried about, can he come in and contribute tomorrow for my team, the way that in the NFL, when you draft Calvin Ridley, when you draft TJ Yeldon, when you draft, Minkah Fitzpatrick, whoever, you expect that guy to come in and play tomorrow. You need him to contribute tomorrow pretty much at every position other than maybe quarterback. And even quarterback, most of these guys are starting in year one. It's not really that way in basketball. What they're really hoping to do, get Colin Sexton in, get him working with their trainers, get him, with their skill people. And in 2, 3, 4 years, we believe that we will have a superstar in Colin Sexton. Now, I'm still not sure that I necessarily buy that the NBA is the best place for these guys to develop, but that is what the NBA believes. And that's why a guy like Colin Sexton, whether he's ready or not, whether he's dominating the college competition or not, you almost have no choice but to go pro, because you run the risk of, if he comes back to Alabama next year and he's not, say he's the 10th pick in the draft this year, even the 15th pick in the draft, if he comes back and he's the same player or maybe a little bit better, then you run the risk of falling to 30, because there's that next group of high school kids coming in and college freshmen. So it's a weird dynamic, Ryan. It's an inexact science, I think, more than people realize, but that is basically the thinking of NBA people.
We're talking to Aaron Torres. Aaron, let me go to the scandal that's facing college basketball. We talked with you last week. I'd love to get your opinion, because what we've learned, obviously, Arizona, Sean Miller, just kind of help us summarize this from your perspective. What do you know different? What do you think about it? Give me your analysis.
Yeah, I think the key, Ryan, is that it's important to remember that the Sean Miller thing is different than the Yahoo report,
sure,
which implicated Colin Sexton, and that's the important thing. But I do think what we're realizing from both cases, and remember, by the way, Ryan, shout out to Aaron Torres, because I told you on your show Friday, Colin Sexton would not miss time. I don't think that Yahoo report was anything that they learned anything in that Yahoo report that they didn't already learn in their independent investigation. Credit to Greg Byrne for conducting that investigation when he did in the fall, which allowed Colin Sexton to avoid any kind of serious punishment right now. So there are two different things. The Yahoo reports are different than the Sean Miller ESPN report. But again, what I think we're realizing is it's clear that these are, the reports that are coming out are leaked information from lawyers that are involved in this FBI case. And so what I think everyone needs to remember is that these lawyers are looking to make their clients, whether it is the NBA agents, in the case of Sean Miller, maybe it's his former assistant coach, I don't know, none of us know, that's leaking this information to try to make someone look bad. But we have to take it all with a grain of salt. I think that we realize that over the weekend that in the first Yahoo case, hey, let's not take a guy's expense report as absolute 100% authority that all of this is accurate. People lie on their expense reports all the time. And guess what? A guy who works for an agent whose job it is to build up relationships with high school players, he's probably even going to lie on his expense report a little bit even more, because he's got to, show his boss that he is building these relationships. With the Sean Miller case, it's fascinating because that's, again, a different one altogether. But what I think we need to remember is that, ESPN on their air, on their website said there is a tape of Sean Miller asking or, setting up a payment for $100,000 for the best player on his team this year, a kid named DeAndre Ayton. So far, we've seen now 2 corrections from ESPN on the initial report, and there's some inconsistencies with the story itself, such as, one, as we all know, Ryan, the head coach never gets on the phone and does a deal himself. 2, the player involved and the agent involved, no one has believed for them to have had any contact during his recruiting period, so it makes no sense for the head coach to even get on the phone with this guy, because this guy, was probably not involved with his recruitment at all. So what I think it says is this, Ryan. We all know underneath the surface there is stuff going on everywhere. but maybe it's not quite as prevalent as this report made it seem, and maybe it's frankly not quite as bad. You're never going to be able to weed out 100% of the cheating no matter how much you try, but I'll tell you this, I feel a lot better about the state of college basketball today on Wednesday than when I came on with you Friday afternoon when that report first broke.
Aaron Torres, connect with Aaron Torres. You can find him on the Twitter account, Aaron_Torres. Man, he's an outstanding follow, especially this time of the year. He's always a great follow, but it just goes up a couple of notches when you look at this time of the year because basketball news, and we want to be a part of it so bad. Aaron, do you realize, we want to be a part of March Madness. But we want to we want to be a part of it, but we don't know if we're going to be a part of it.
Well, and I was going to say, remember a few weeks ago we debated the NCAA tournament starts the same day as Alabama spring football. You know, you might whether you want to or not, you might have your lead story whether that was intended that way or not. Because this Tide team, they got to turn around. I think they can do it. It's up to them. The ball's in their court. They have the chances to pick up those big wins. It'll be interesting to see whether they do it or not.
Hey, and what we're going to do now, listen, if we're not able to get this basketball thing turned around this year, next year, we're not just going to get a new stadium. We're going to tear down the old one, the Coleman Coliseum, going to build a football parking lot.
Yeah, another waterfall attachment to the football facility.
We don't like losing in Tuscaloosa, man. You ever hear Nick Saban? Guy says, I hate to lose more than I like to win. Well, we've sort of adopted that in all of our sports. We don't like to lose,
How's
man.
everybody else doing? How's the gymnastics? They're usually pretty good, right?
Yeah, we're okay. Yeah.
Baseball,
we're okay. Good? Hey, undefeated, baby.
I was going to say, who's like the second best athletic program at Alabama right now?
Probably softball.
Ooh, softball, right? As that rival is under investigation, right?
Yeah, Auburn softball. Yeah, look at you. You dropping college softball nuggets? Come on.
Listen, basketball is going to be over soon. If you're not ready to jump back into football with me, we can talk softball till the cows come home. No.
It's okay. Let's just we'll listen. We're 20 days away. Hey, Aaron, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, sir. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.